Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Gabriella Gallagher. I'm the National Chair of Canadian Friends of Peace Now. And as you can see, we are doing things a little differently today. We are enabling all our participants to be visible with the video. And that's so that we can see you, have the sense of the audience with us, and that we're all together as if we were all together in one room. If you wish, I would highly suggest, that you put your view on speaker view, so that when somebody's speaking, like myself right at this moment, you can see the speaker, especially when our Israeli guest, Dana, joins us, starts to speak, that you see her speaking. It'll be a better view for you. And the other thing is, and the setting, that setting you can find at the top right-hand corner of your screen. I'm just going to say a few words about who we are for those of you who are new to our organization. Canadian Friends of Peace Now is the partner organization to Peace Now in Israel, Shalom Achshav as it's known. Peace Now advocates for the two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it's the premier peace group in Israel. You can find out more about us and about Peace Now by going to our website, peacenowcanada.org. And if you so would consider it, we would love for you to make a donation, which you can also do on our website. We rely entirely on the support of people like you, so we really do need your donations. Now, if any of you don't want to have your faces visible, I hope you know that you can just turn off your video. Your microphones are off at this time. When we get to the Q&A, the question and answer part of our event, then what we'll ask you to do is, we'd like you to do it right whenever you wish, to put your questions into the chat. The chat is only going to be used for questions, not for general chatter. I would like to also urge you, though, if you not to use the chat for any other reason, because it can be very distracting to our audience when people are chatting too much. So when we get to the Q&A part of the event, what we'll do is Jonathan, one of our moderators, will be collecting the questions, and he will ask you to raise your hand. You can then raise your hand. There's a little feature at the bottom of the screen called reactions, and you can put your hand up, and then Jonathan will acknowledge you and unmute you, and you can ask your question to Dana directly. And we hope that gives you more of a feeling of really being engaged and part of this event. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that we have an annual general meeting after our webinar, and I hope you will join us for that. Our webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our website after. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our wonderful guest speaker and our moderators. Dana Mills is the Director of Development and External Relations for Peace Now, Shalom Achshav. Dana spent her high school years as a youth activist in the Shalom Achshav movement. After pursuing 2 political science degrees at Tel Aviv University, she received her PhD from the University of Oxford in 2014. She is the author of several very interesting academic books, including one on Rosa Luxemburg. In March 2021, she returned to Shalom Achshav to take on her current position. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that she has hardly had a chance to catch her breath since then and has been working full out on this important mission. And she'll be speaking today on Peace Now, why Peace Now is so crucial and important. And now our first moderator for the event is going to be Bob Cates, who is a board member and the head of our Toronto chapter. And our second moderator, who will be taking the questions, is Jonathan Gendler, also from Toronto and also a board member. Okay, over to you, Bob. Thank you.
Hi, I'm really glad to see you here today. And I'm going to go and start with a nice, easy question. What do you see as Peace Now's greatest challenges, and how are you working to overcome them?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for joining today. The support of our Canadian friends has been really, really crucial generally, but over the past few months, especially since I started. So it's really lovely to be with you. What is Peace Now's greatest challenge? To bring peace back on the agenda in a time in which separation and division is more apparent than ever, in time in which the occupation and the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians seem as if they can never end. This is the challenge that we face every day, and this is the challenge that we try to rise to every day. And the idea of campaigning every single day for a just peace, not just peace, but a just peace, a peace that is good for both sides of the conflict, is something that we fight for every day, and yet is completely not on the table right now. So this is quite a large challenge for us that we try to rise to every day.
Wow. I want to talk about something that is very top of mind to a lot of people here in Canada. We know that Peace Now has campaigned quite vigorously against the eviction of Palestinians from their homes in East Jerusalem. In July, Peace Now held a major conference, produced a video, which we rather proudly helped fund. Why was it so important to create this campaign? What do you think you've been able to achieve? And what sort of follow-up actions may you be taking?
So the East Jerusalem campaign has been completely our flagship campaign this year, and it is entirely thanks to your very generous support that we were able to take it off the ground and to bring it to the forefront of news, both locally and internationally. The cases of eviction in East Jerusalem are crucial for several reasons. First of all, these are some of the worst human rights abuses that Palestinians are faced with today. The poverty rate in East Jerusalem is at some areas around 80%. People live really harsh lives, and in addition to everyday challenges, they are faced with the danger of being kicked out of their homes by settler eviction claims. Just for the context, for those who don't know the bigger picture, we're talking about a law according to which Jews can claim property that they owned before 1948, not them specifically, but owned by Jews, whereas Palestinians, of course, are not allowed to claim property owned by Palestinians before 1948. And according to these evictions lawsuits, people are really faced with existential danger. Now, that's the very kind of basic human rights argument. And I have to say, as someone who has been to Silwan almost, I think, once every 2 weeks or three weeks at worst, it really does shock you to see what it means to live and to realize you might be losing your home every day. But on a broader geopolitical level, ensuring that the fact that East Jerusalem carries the Palestinian character it has ensures the possibility of a viable Palestinian capital for the future Palestinian state. And this movement of settlers towards East Jerusalem is not coincidental. This is an attempt to Jewify, to make it more, to make it part of West Jerusalem, really. And this is a grave danger for the two-state solution. So the defense of East Jerusalem as a Palestinian community where people have the right to keep living in their homes is something that is very important and significant for the possibility for a two-state solution. The conference and the entire campaign we held in July, the campaign was longer than that, but there was a very large conference in July, completely supported by Canadian Friends of Peace Now. We're so very grateful. This is the time I can thank you all in person. Really changed the agenda and really helped us to bring this issue onto everyone's everyday thinking. Because I think the thing that really shocks me in this job and we encounter every day is that you can have a really calm and peaceful life in the west of Jerusalem and not know that 15 minutes away from you, people are fighting to keep their homes. So with actions such as the video that we produced, the conference, ongoing educational programs that have come out of this campaign is still shown in student lectures, in events in which we talk about the East Jerusalem evictions. This is when all the materials we produced with your very, very graceful assistance come into action. And this is really key to our advocacy, because as long as we have a possibility for a two-state solution with East Jerusalem as its capital, we have something valuable to fight for. But when we lose that, a lot of the vision for which we're fighting is gone.
Thank you. The evictions that were to take place, I gather the courts delayed the decision. Can you tell us what's happening now with any of the high-profile evictions?
Yeah, so the Sheikh Jarrah decision is actually expected sometimes this week, although it might be delayed again. The Silwan eviction case was actually last Monday. And it's a very interesting case. Just to give a bit of background, it's a case in which Peace Now filed an amicus brief in which we asked to join as friends of the court, using an opinion written by leading international human rights law experts that claim that Palestinians have the right to stay in their homes because they have the right to a community. They are part of an underprivileged population. They don't have civil rights. They cannot vote. They cannot choose their political representation. And yet they are part of a legal system in which they have no ability to influence. So our legal opinion might and should change the terms of discourse, rather from making it a property claim between two people, as if you and I, Bob, were fighting over a porch, to looking at two populations that are actually part of a big political conflict. There is no decision in either case. We're waiting to hear both of Silwan and Sheikh Jarrah. The Silwan case was very mixed in its discussion. In Sheikh Jarrah there was a compromise offered in which the Palestinians were allowed to keep their houses if they were recognized as some kind of protected residents, but the settlers would still have some kind of right of ownership. And it's unclear whether either side has actually any motive in accepting this compromise. But this is very timely and should unfold within the next few weeks.
And what about West Bank settlements? What's been happening lately? And I'm afraid that many of us who read the news know some of the answer, but we'd like to hear in depth what Peace Now is doing to oppose it.
So West Bank settlements, what has not been happening? That's the question. There has been a huge surge of approvals just after this government. And just to give background to our listeners, this government was elected with the title, the Government of Change. And we just published a report this Friday under the heading, the Government of Change for the Worse, because when you look at the settlement policy, actually, we're seeing quite a large surge in kind of pushing certain projects on the ground. I'll talk about the worst ones in that sense. There's been 1,300 tenders approved. There's been almost 3,000 housing units approved, all in key areas, all really detrimental to the two-state solution. There's been a huge surge in illegal outposts. We counted at least 4 illegal outposts founded since June. So this is, we're talking about less than 5 months. And we're very concerned about that. What do? We campaign and we lobby on all fronts. Peace Now, Shalom Achshav, works both as a grassroots movement. So we have demonstrations, we have actions. We went to campaign opposite some of the leaders of the parties that are meant to represent us, but have been very quiet indeed on the issue of settlements. But we also lobby our politicians, and we lobby the people who are supposed to represent our voice in government. And a lot of parties who are sitting in this coalition, this is a very broad coalition that goes from the far right with a huge support of the settler lobby to a very liberal left. A lot of people who sit in this coalition are signed to a two-state solution if you look at their manifestos. But there's a very big discrepancy between the manifesto and what they're actually doing on the ground. So Peace Now is taking to task all those people in various kinds of action. And just this Friday, I mentioned our report, we had a cover piece in Yediot Achronot, one of the most read papers, that looked at how the surge of building is happening under Meretz. Meretz was traditionally the party most identified with anti-settlement, and indeed a lot of the MKs come from Shalom Achshav. Mossi Raz and Gabi Lasky were to both director generals of Shalom Achshav and are now MKs from Meretz. So we are working really in all avenues to stop this surge and to make clear how dangerous this is. I just want to say one last thing, that in addition to the general surge of building that we're concerned about, there are several specific locations that are really detrimental to the two-state solution, that are really dangerous, whether it's Givat HaMatos in Yerushalayim, E1, and we're very much working to highlight that insisting on not furthering building there is really key to preserving the viability of the two-state solution.
Now, I'm not sure if you keep up with Canadian news. We had an election earlier this month, and last week we had a new Minister of Global Affairs. Now, Gabriella had done a wonderful job training our previous minister, but unfortunately he is gone, and so now we have to get a new minister trained. What do you think Canada can and should do in terms of stopping the settlements, or at least slowing them or delaying them?
First of all, my condolences, Gabriella, and I feel your pain as someone who has to brief people who disappear from office every 2 minutes exactly. Part of the job, but still disappointing. I think to be a true friend of Israel at this time is to keep Israel to its promises, to keep Israel to its commitment to the two-state solution, to show Israel that by committing to protecting human rights on both sides of the border, it would actually serve the Israeli interests. And Canada has been remarkable in doing that, in sort of supporting Israel, but also showing the way towards, as I mentioned, a just peace, which is our goal at this point. So I think the commitment to that could be something that can really help us do the work from inside. Shalom Achshav is a movement that campaigns internally. Unlike a lot of other organizations, we focus on advocating for the Israeli public. But it is without doubt that without help from our international partners, very little can change here. And one of my favorite poems is John Donne, "No man is an island," and I think no country is an island, even if it really tries to act as such. So the support of our international partners and holding Israel to check to its commitment and to its promises would be a huge help.
Thank you, and we will certainly keep at that. You have touched on the new government a few times and the unusual broad coalition. It's been, what, about 8 months they've been in power. From peace camp perspective, do you think that the new government has made any progress in terms of peace, has been any better than the Netanyahu government, or are we still stuck in the old paradigm?
I mean, it's a really, really difficult question and an excellent one. I think that this government has been very dangerous in furthering settlement plans, as we mentioned, but has been helpful in other things, in the sense that this is the first time since the 90s, since I joined Shalom Achshav as a teenager, that the left is actually in government and in power. And there's a lot that can be done through these avenues. So for instance, Shalom Achshav spoke at 2 debates on settler violence. I know that you held a few discussions yourselves, and you highlight that issue from your side. We're able to go to government and to talk to it directly in a way that we couldn't before. So it's a very mixed bag for us. But it's very clear that the right has a lot of power in this government, and the right really controls a lot of the agenda. And it's our job to wake up the left and to tell it that it has commitments. And just as the right is pushing its agenda, the left should also push its agenda, which it's not exactly doing now. Now, it's really important to put in context that this Wednesday, there is the vote on the budget. So a lot has been put on hold, and a lot of people say they don't want to rock the boat before the budget is passed. After the budget is passed, we hope that we can come more clearly with issues that are really, really urgent and put them on the table. But it's a very, very mixed picture, I have to say.
One of the issues that was put on the table by the new government was the banning of the naming of 6 Palestinian organizations as terrorists, to which the US has objected. What is your opinion on this, and does Peace Now have an opinion on this?
Peace Now joined 24 other organizations in an ad in Haaretz newspaper and a wide other forums that showed solidarity with these 6 organizations. And I have to say, a lot of the organizations with which we signed the ad, which are Israeli human rights organizations, such as Yesh Din, for instance, work very closely with these Palestinian organizations. As a result of this ad, or maybe as a supplement to it, a delegation went to Ramallah this Wednesday, on which I was honored to be part. And this delegation was a solidarity delegation visiting the 6 organizations in the El-Haq headquarters, but representatives of all organizations were there. There was a brief press conference. And I think that the government of Israel is working very hard to silence dissent. We feel it ourselves. We see it ourselves around us. And it's very clear that Palestinian human rights organizations are fighting a very hard battle here. And it's our responsibility to stand in solidarity with our comrades because we can, because we are under this government. We are citizens of this government. They are not. They are now protesting an external body, a military occupation that they don't have any traction in. And I spent the whole day in Ramallah, and it felt like a very significant day in which really I can't remember another forum in which all of us were brought together, so many representatives of so many organizations. And it's really key that the defense of human rights remains on the international agenda and has protection. Being a human rights defender is a hugely dangerous job as it is. So adding political hunting down really does make that almost impossible. So we have been proud to be part of this campaign of solidarity as part of the civil society in Israel.
Is there any truth in Ganz's claim that these people are all associated with terrorists in some way, shape, or form?
I mean, if I could see Ganz's papers, then maybe I'd have a more informed decision or opinion. But you know, the whole kind of Ori Shabak and his cousin can see it is not really helpful. It's a really complicated question of who is implicated in terrorism and who is defined as a terrorist. You know, in my past, I was an academic, as Gabriela kindly introduced me, and it's really important to remember that one Nelson Mandela, before he won the Nobel Prize, was a terrorist and was incarcerated for a long time of his life as a terrorist. So I don't know what all of these people do. I know that a lot of my friends work with them every day. And I know that when I went to Ramallah, a 65-year-old man came and shook my hand and said, "Thank you for coming." And you can see I'm not a terrorist, am I not? And I believe that one has to go with humanity in this case. And again, and when I see the smoking gun documents and when I have all the information that proves why this decision was made, and I should say why this decision was made without informing the foreign minister or the prime minister or Washington, then I believe that all of these 6 organizations were all implicated in terrorism. But until that happens, I think innocent until proven guilty.
Sounds fair. I have now a very controversial question. Many people feel that the Israeli left, including us in Shalom Achshav, are too one-sided in criticizing the Israeli government, yet letting the Palestinian Authority off the hook for such things as anti-Semitism in its media, human rights violations, and rejection of past peace plans. How would you answer these critics? And do you think that Shalom Achshav could or should gain supporters by taking a different approach, which they would call more balanced?
I think it's not a question of balance, but it's a question of you campaign against your own government. Shalom Achshav doesn't campaign against the Palestinian Authority. It doesn't campaign opposite the Canadian government, nor does it campaign against the American government. We are an Israeli movement that focuses on the Israeli government. I can't speak for other organizations. You'd have to ask them for their opinion, but our position is very clear. We advocate towards those who we elect or those who we could elect. And in terms of the defense, in terms of anti-Semitism, Shalom Achshav doesn't intervene in that at all. As someone who lived abroad for 13 years, it's something that is close to my heart personally, but we are a movement that focuses on Israel, which is the only true state. So we focus our efforts here, and we have enough work to do as it is. When it comes to human rights defense, this is very much related to your previous question. The only thing we can do is to work with people who advocate for Palestinian human rights and who advocate for the two-state solution. But me as a citizen of Israel, I can't come with demands to the Palestinian Authority. They are not my representation. When the Palestinian state is founded and there are two sovereign states side by side, then we will be able to have normal mediations, negotiations, and discussions as are taking place, as there was a renewal of relationship between Israel and Sweden, for instance, after a few years of cold relationship, and then Israel and Sweden sat together to table. Until there's a Palestinian state and we have representatives who are equal in standing, I can't campaign an authority that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, it sounds as good as we can get. Now, there was a photograph that's been in the media quite a lot lately of Avner Wishnitzer, whose name I hope I haven't mangled too badly, handcuffed, blindfolded, and under arrest by Israeli police. He is the leader of Combatants for Peace and a former commando himself. And his crime was quite serious. Apparently, he was delivering water to Palestinians. So do you think that this photograph, the way it's been circulating, is going to have any impact on the peace process and on our ability to communicate the importance of it?
So this is a really important question. Thank you for raising it. And it goes to a broader trend, which I kind of hinted towards earlier, which is the way that peace organizations are treated within Israel, and being under attack by our own authority and feeling that we have to defend our right for existence, let alone being able to campaign freely. And this photograph really showed police violence that I have to say every protest I go to, my mother is still worried. And it's not because I'm 16 as when I joined Shalom Achshav, but because things are still very volatile. Police violence is really, really terrible here towards Palestinians all the time. When it comes towards Israelis, then you see the pictures. I should say these pictures are not rare. We see them in demonstrations. We see them every time we go to Sheikh Jarrah or opposite the court. When there's an appeal in East Jerusalem, there's really harsh police violence. And this is a phenomenon that we're trying to highlight and we're trying to talk about. Now, I think the issue that came out of this matter, and it's actually a good example into, I believe, what solidarity can do. After this picture circulated, a lot of the other organizations, including us, joined together in a solidarity march 3 days after this picture came out and went to the same village to bring water. And there were about, I think, 600, 700 people who turned up. And I think it shows that when we are together, when we are many, then we are a force, and then it's harder to intimidate us. But the reality is really very hard. And I think people abroad, including some people in Israel itself, don't know what it's like to go and campaign on a daily basis. And you must never make too much of doing what is right, but there is a very high price here and it should be acknowledged.
Thank you very much for that. Just before I ask the final question, I want to remind people that Jonathan is sitting there with his notepad waiting for people to ask questions so he can call on them and invite them to come on the screen and answer. So use the chat, please, to get to him. Now, the final question that I have, nice, easy question for once. The prospects for a negotiated two-state solution seem, as you have suggested, more elusive than ever. Do you think the peace camp can make a difference? And where do you see opportunities for moving forward with Peace Now's message?
First of all, I do believe that there's a possibility, and otherwise I wouldn't get up in the morning and do my job every day, because I think we have to have hope. And when I say we, it's we as a community, including our friends abroad, who make our work possible in so many ways. Now, in terms of the belief in the two-state solution, there are also sorts of interesting data that show that when you ask majority of people in Israel, they do believe that the two-state solution is the best solution. They just don't think it's viable. So the question is, how do we make something from an ideal into practice? And this is what we do every day. We show how, if we were to tame settlement expansion, if we were to hold check building trends, then the two-state solution is not impossible at all. If you look at Peace Now's map, we're just working on the new one that will be already 2022. You really see that most settlements can be part of a future agreement. There's the Geneva plan, which is very clear about how that is possible. Now, the other interesting data that it just came across is that after a very large dip in the belief in two-state solution on the Palestinian side, recent trust building measures, such as allowing families to unify, which has been controversial here, but was able to pass, actually the support of two-state solution has risen. So lo and behold, when you build trust between people, when you enable people to have more humane lives, and when you teach them that there's no enemy on the other side, that we're all just human beings, we want to live our lives, then the belief in the ability to live side by side, two separate countries, actually rises. So all we can do is to keep advocating and to keep educating and to keep agitating and to show that this is really the only solution that is viable and that could help both peoples live a dignified and humane life. And that is just why we do our job every day. And that is why we're so very grateful to have your support and to have you in partnership, really, because I think of our international supporters as part of our community. And I think of you as we're all doing the work together, from each to their own, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. And I think that really this support has been more crucial than ever. And I cannot thank you all enough for doing what you do and for coming here today and for continuing to advocate and doing what you can where you can.
I really appreciate that answer, and it just gives us a little bit more motivation to work just a little bit harder. Now I want to turn over to Jonathan. Jonathan Gentler has been taking down any questions people have and will now take over as moderator.
Hi, and good afternoon to everybody. Well, so up until about a minute ago, we only had very few questions, but now I'm bombarded by quite a lot, so that's actually a very good thing. So the first question came from Elizabeth Block, and I would like Elizabeth to ask her question. Let me just find you, Elizabeth. If you can, the guys who asked questions, the people who asked questions, sorry, if you can please use the reaction option below the screen. There's an option to raise hand. If you do that, then you'll pop up to the top of the list in my participant list, and I'll be able to, yeah, that's great. Okay, so just a second. Okay, Elizabeth, you can now unmute yourself and ask the question.
Okay. You support a two-state solution. What's your plan B? I have asked this of a couple of Canadian politicians. Bob Ray ducked the question. The NDP foreign affairs critic at the time said he had no plan B. What's your plan B when you can no longer pretend that there is going to be a second state? What then?
I'm afraid my answer is also that we don't have a plan B because we think that a two-state solution is the only solution. That is the solution we support. When and if we fail, then we'll be in such dire states, because I'm afraid the one-state solution, if there is a one-state solution, the one-state solution we're moving towards is a solution in which Palestinians have no rights at all and are completely annexed under the Israeli government. And then really, this is not a plan B that we're willing to think about. So the reason why we advocate and why we work the way we do is we believe that the two-state solution is not only viable, but it is the only solution that we would like to support.
Okay, so just want to mention that we had a very similar question from Sandy Rubinfield. So I guess we don't need to repeat the same question. Thank you. Okay, the next question is by Smadar Meiri. Smadar, can you please raise your hand? Okay, thank you. Okay, Smadar, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, okay, I wrote it down, but let me see if I can find what I wrote. Yes, so I asked, could you comment on today's article by Gideon Levy on Haaretz arguing that the left babbles more, talks, and the right acts? And he gave examples, they're building settlements. You know, I think like the campaign against Ben and Jerry's, we see against the right. By the way, the North American Jewish organizations have been at it for a while. So, you know what I mean? Like, he's saying we're not doing enough, the left.
Oh, and so I haven't read this specific article. I read Gidon fairly religiously, but I was at work all day, so I haven't managed to read him yet. So thank you for that. I agree that we're not doing enough, but that's why we try to push harder, and that's why we try to get more supporters, and that's why we try to work on more fronts. So, you know, it's something that we think about every day. Where have we not been yet? Which action have we not tried? Which forum have we not spoken to? I completely agree. I mean, I think it's an international phenomenon, and I think it's something that at least I was politically involved in England too, and the right is always more organized because the right is militant. The right comes from a very specific point of view, and the left defends human rights. It's less sexy, it's less easy to get people under that umbrella, but that is why we try to check ourselves, we try to expand our actions, and we try to expand our platforms every single day. So I usually agree with Gideon, but I definitely agree with Gideon on that.
Thank you. Charles Heller, can you please raise your hand so I can unmute you? And please, everybody who asked the question, can you already raise your hand so you know you'll be in the queue, and I'll be able to. Excellent, thank you. So Charles, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Hello, I'm here. Well, my question is, I just want clarification about the polls. I thought until I was just listening right just now, I'd read that the polls show a majority of Israelis do not believe in a two-state solution, but now you're saying that actually they do. So I just want some clarification.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So the majority of Israelis want a two-state solution, but they don't believe it's viable. So the question is, how do we translate this support, which is ideological and which is a belief that this is the best solution, to a plan that is an actionable plan? So I think from our point of view, as I said, geopolitically, it's still very much viable. There are a lot of things that can be done to make it a viable solution. But part of our work in advocacy and education is show people exactly that thing that they believe and want to happen is actually practical, and they can champion it, and they should champion it, and they should campaign for it. So this is the discrepancy we're working against every day between what is the thing that they want and what is the thing that they think is doable.
Thank you. The next question is from Dell. Just a second, Dell. Yeah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
Okay, so earlier this year, the the Office of the Prosecutor for the International Criminal Court began an investigation into the situation in the state of Palestine. And my question is whether that sort of international organization involvement complicates the movement toward a two-state solution and poses barriers to it.
Thank you. That's a really, really important question. I don't think so. I think this is something that we have to see how it pans out. Obviously, anything that is in legal process, we can't politically discuss until it is a done issue. However, actually bringing international justice and holding Israel to account, as I said, I think there's a mistaken view that if you are pro-Palestinian, then you are anti-Israeli. And actually, I think serving the Israeli interest in the best way is advocating for the Palestinian interest and showing that being accountable to preserving human rights, to not infringing on international law, etc., is actually something that Israel as a country should do. So I don't think it complicates the two-state solution at all. If anything, it will hold Israel to check, and it will help exactly those processes that I was talking about, stopping settlement expansion, stopping house evictions, stopping demolitions. We as an organization don't work on demolitions, but clearly they're very, very dangerous and very detrimental to any kind of solution. So I think we wait to see how it pans out, but we don't think at all it will be detrimental to the two-state solution.
Thank you. There's a question here from someone who asked to remain anonymous and asked me to read the question. Not that it's so controversial, but anyhow. The question is it possible for you to identify any positive actions that have occurred since the establishment of the new government? So, you know, besides the negative, what's positive when it comes, of course, to our discussion about the two-state solution?
Of course, so it's a bit sad that you want to be anonymous when you ask a positive question. This is great. Let's be positive. We want to be hopeful. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." He didn't say, "I have a nightmare." Yes, the government did a lot of really good things. I mean, first of all, we have a government that works, which for the first time in I don't know how long, this country has been in standstill, and put the occupation aside, which is what I can't do every day in my work, but as a citizen of the state, there was no budget, there was no sort of administrative running on any kind of basis. And now all of that is running. We have a new Minister of Transport, Merav Michaeli, whom we attack very often on her policy on settlements, but she has started a lot of things in public transport, which is really very important. There are a lot of sort of social economic changes in how this government is treating its policies. This government also it's a very, very interesting government in other ways, because it's the first government without Haredim, without ultra-Orthodox. So there's been a push towards, for instance, moving away from a monopoly of the rabbinical authorities on kosher laws. Up till now, it was a very kind of biased and very complicated process. And now there's a bunch of other bodies that can give kosher certificate. So it's done some very positive thing. I think our fears now is that it's using a lot of positive changes to deflect attention from the negative things that happen. And it's very easy to appease the kind of your average Israeli liberal lefty who says, oh, but we're now talking about public transport over Shabbat, or we're now talking about different taxes or whatever, and not talking about these huge settlement expansions. So actually, it is doing quite a lot of positive things, only not sadly in the fields that we work on.
Okay, thank you. At least we can remain optimistic about other things, maybe not so much with the Palestinians, but at least I agree that other areas in human rights in Israel have been improved. I see here that Sandy Rubenfeld actually has a question that's a little different than the previous question about the two-state solution. It has to do with the same subject. So Sandy, I invite you to ask your question. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, I asked two questions, so I'm not sure whether it was the first or second one.
The first one was very similar to previous question about are there still chances for a two-state solution, but the second one is more relevant.
Okay, I was going to say, it seems to me that more and more Jewish activists. I heard something just yesterday. It was a debate between Peter Beinart and Brett Stevens, moderated by Jody Rudoran of The Forward. And but it seems to me a lot of Jewish activists are now advocating for a one-state solution. They've given up on the two states, looking for Israelis and Palestinians somehow under a government that supports the same human rights for all. So how do you counter that? What do you say as a two-state being better for that, better than this utopian one-state solution that somehow treats Israelis and Palestinians the same?
I mean, I don't think it's utopian, and I don't think it's necessarily utopian from the point of view of Palestinians. We're still living in an era of nation states, and I don't think most Palestinians would want to give up a sovereignty in their own country. So I think this is kind of a lose-lose on both sides. I think that many Jews in the world, maybe not all, but many would still like to have a Jewish state somewhere. And in the same way, many Palestinians in diaspora would benefit a lot and would want a Palestinian state to exist. So I think there are very strong interests to have both states. Now, I have to say something in this context, and this is I really appreciate the way you put through the question, because it's a really subtle and interesting way to think about it. For many of us, when we talk about the two-state solution, it's the way to end the conflict. We don't say that we'll be like that for 200 years. It might be, we're talking about one of the most volatile conflicts in which people really, the distrust runs very deeply. And I say that as someone who was raised in the movement, and in the 90s, I would spend my weekends going to meet Palestinian youth and going over the border and seeing what it's like in Palestine. My cousins don't have that experience. That we are talking about 30 more years of complete disengagement, of a lot of hostility, of a lot of violence, and on huge casualties. In order to get to a stage when we can talk about mutual faith, when we can talk about living together, we need some kind of interim stage. When we talk about the two-state solution, it could be a stage. It could be that in 30 years, in 50 years, in 100 years, that trust is built and people feel confident and walls are brought down. But to think that we would jump from living in a state of basically constant war, and as Gabriela kindly mentioned, we had the May escalation just a month after I started my job. Some of you might have seen me speak, then we had a vigil and I spoke very briefly then. To go from that to living with no borders at all and all of us as one, I don't think it's utopian, it's just non-realistic. And I think I have a lot of sympathy towards my Palestinian friends and comrades who say, we want our state, we want to figure things out for ourselves first. And again, maybe in 20, 40, 50, 100 years, we will be living together and we'll bring down the wall. But we need an interim step, and that interim step, at the very least, is this two-state solution.
Great answer, thank you.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So far we've been gathering questions from our audience. And since I did not see any new questions from the general audience, I would like to allow a few of our board members to ask their questions right now. And we will start with Izzy. Izzy, please unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for, can you hear me?
Sure.
Is my mic is working?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for participating in this thing. I'm just wondering, who do you think is going to replace Abbas, and would this new person make a significant difference in Israel-Palestinian relations?
I'll take the second half first, because the first I can't answer. We don't know. We try to keep track of what's going on in Palestine, but as I said, it's their game to play. Of course, it will make a difference, and of course, it will be significant for us, but it's for us to wait and see, and to build confidence and to allow the most efficient exchange of information. And to go to the previous question about positive steps that this government has taken, there have been several ministers and several high-ranked officials of this government who went to meet Abbas after many years of complete disconnect. So rebuilding some kind of conversation is something that is vital for any kind of movement towards a political resolution of the conflict. But who will take over? We don't know. And I don't know when there'll be an election. As you probably know, in May, one of the reasons that this escalation took hold was also the idea of Palestinian elections after many years of having no elections. So it's for us to wait and see, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Jacqueline. Please unmute yourself.
First, thanks for coming. Thanks for speaking to us. It's really been interesting and enlightening. I just want to ask you about the chances of reinstating the Palestinian consulate and how important it is.
Oh, wow. Yeah, excellent question. We think that there is a fair chance, fair plus chance. There have been interesting shifts in the American embassy. Obviously, we are not the only people who have had a change of government, and the changes in the American side of things and moving things towards a more, shall we say, gently positive direction in resolution of issues here has been really, really vital. I remain, as you probably noticed, I remained optimistic. I think you have to have some optimism in this job, otherwise you can't do it. And I do think that there is, at least I can say that there's international recognition of how important the consulate is. And in my conversations with other embassies, a lot of what I do is talking to ambassadors and talking to heads of missions, etc. There has been huge interest in refounding the consulate and sort of moving things to a more positive point of start. And I think it's significant for all the reasons that preserving East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine is significant, for all the reasons of allowing some kind of equal traction. I mean, it's just so horrendous to see the inequality in which Israel is a large and in many ways powerful state that has embassies and ambassadors all over the world and does incredible work in diplomacy. And Palestinians kind of rely on anything that can get them out of ad hoc situations. So having a consulate and having a kind of stable place would be really, really crucial.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from our board member, David Cohen. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Jonathan. There is a Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement that treats products from settlements as Israeli products, and therefore the settlements receive the full benefits of the trade agreement, as these settlements were part of Israel. Do you think that Canadian Friends for Peace Now should pressure the Canadian government to cancel those benefits to settlers, because it would serve the purpose of a two-state solution? I know it's a bit, you have to be careful with diplomacy, but again, we are with friends, among friends here.
Yeah, we are among friends, and that's a great question, and we absolutely would appreciate doing that. And I think, boycotting settlement goods is not boycotting Israel. That's a really important distinction that actually our foreign minister failed to do, because he went after Ben and Jerry's for talking about settlement, about divesting from settlement sales, and attack them as if they were part of Israel also. I think this is a really important distinction, and one that is key to preserving the possibility for a two-state solution, and one that is key to reminding people of the existence of the Green Line. And one of the things we've been working on right now in terms of educational campaigns is actually bringing maps to kids and bringing maps to schools that have the Green Line on them, because some people told us, my son goes to school and there's no green line on the map of Israel that they have in their class. So from age 6, you're taught that the settlements are part of Israel and there's no difference from what's going on both sides of the border. Absolutely, this is key. And this would be actually a really wonderful campaign for you to support and for you to push through. So excellent question, and we'd really appreciate that. And we'd be, of course, happy to work on that with you.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for only one more quick question, and the winner is Saul. So Saul, please unmute yourself.
I hope it's an optimistic question for the end.
Thank you very much, Dana, for your really some really interesting and positive answers. I don't know if it's positive or not. The U.S. responded very, very negatively to the announcement about new settlements. Do you think that that Naftali Bennett will go ahead despite what Anthony Blinken's threats of severe response? And does the U.S. or does anybody have any power over Bennett right now from outside Israel?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, we hope that he will listen to our American friends and to people who, again, want the Israeli interest and want to serve the Israeli interest by holding Israel's actions to check. And whether or not he'll do it, I mean, I think most prime ministers have been at some point very much, they allowed Washington to hold them to check, shall we say, gently. And there are well-known stories of how various foreign ministers and how various foreign secretaries were able to stop various processes from happening. So it's very much hope that indeed he will do the right thing and listen to Secretary Blinken and indeed President Joe Biden, who have been very clear in their messaging and have been very clear in what they expect Israel to do. Whether or not he'll do it, I mean, I have to say, I still, despite, I mean, Michael Sfard, who I know you hosted for a webinar not so long ago, who's our legal advisor, has in his Twitter bio, Israeli human rights lawyer and still an optimist. And I still count myself as part of that camp, not a human rights lawyer, but an optimist. And I think reason and justice do triumph in the end. And it takes a long time and it's a very, very hard path. And that's why we so much appreciate all of us who walk this path together. But there is a way. And in moments like that, when the international community gives us a sign of what is the right way to get out of this place, then it's very much hope that indeed reason will triumph. So yeah, I do think that it will resonate at some point.
Okay, thank you very much. And right on time, we just finished this part. I just like to remind everybody that if you want to stay for the next part, it is open to everybody. So you're welcome to stay for the next meeting as well. And with this, I want to return the lead to Gabriela. Gabriela, just a second.
You don't have to unmute.
Oh, I don't have to. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank
you, Dana.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Dana. You can hear me. Yes?
Me.
Yeah. You have given us so much to think about. Your answers have been so illuminating and inspiring, and I'm just so deeply grateful to have you come and visit with us, talk to us, and motivate us. I hope I feel very doubly motivated after hearing you speak and knowing how hard you and all the other activists at Peace Now work. What we do here is a support role, but it's I think an important support role, and I hope other people feel motivated to continue and redouble our efforts. Thank you to all those who participated in this event, and looking forward to seeing you again. And as Jonathan said, to stay for the annual general meeting if you wish. I would also like to encourage anyone who feels so moved to send us a donation. That's one, I hope you will consider, easy way to support Peace Now. With a donation, you can do it by visiting our website, peacenowcanada.org. And if you're leaving now, well, I wish you a very good day. And if otherwise, I look forward to seeing you. We'll start again in a few minutes. Dana, thank you again.
Just wanted to say thank you for having me, and thank you so much, all of you, for all your support and for everything you do. And we really are a community, and we're doing this together. And please don't hesitate to get in touch and to ask and to spread our information. A lot of what you can do is just, we do a lot of advocacy online. We do a lot of information that Canadian Friends of Peace now also shares. So do make use of that. And thank you again for coming, and have a great rest of your day. I shall go and make myself dinner. It's already 8 p.m. here. So take care, everyone.
B'tei avon.
תודה רבה. לילה טוב.
לילה טוב.